I can reflect on my parents. So my father was caregiver to mom. And dad, those of you who knew my father, was a very quiet man. Never really, I think in my entire life, I saw him angry less than 5 times. So he would internalize a lot. He would think things through and figure things out. And it was only when he came to the other side of it that he turned around one day and said he had had a hard time accepting what was happening to mom and their relationship, right? Because they were equals, as we said earlier, husband and wife, and now he was becoming almost the father to his wife. And what that must have meant, we never got into all of it, but what that must have meant for him as a husband, anticipating what should have been their golden years together, is now suddenly in a caretaking mode. And of course, I saw my father, I saw him decline because of that, right? Because he never thought about himself. He never ate well. He never,
Yep, you take it all on yourself.
But it happened. My mother lost over 40 pounds taking care of my father. Like it was on her, because as much as all of us went for a few hours a day or whatever it is that we could do, we left, we went home. At the end of the day, she dealt with him 24/7, 7 days a week. And that took a toll. And when you're seeing that, you're like, okay, this is where we need to now step in a little harder and saying, Mom, this is not good. And we talk to my mom constantly, Mom, there needs to come a point that you have to possibly consider placing Dad in a home. As much as maybe she didn't want to do it and we didn't want to do it, but I was always seeing, well, what if, because my father at the end of the day was still a man and he was strong. And if he didn't understand and he got upset, well, what was he capable of doing? Not because he meant to, but what would have happened, if let's say all of a sudden he got very upset and my mother was alone with him, how would she have been able to handle the situation? And, it just came to the point that even though we spoke with the social workers, they're like, look, the waiting list is long. Like, they were saying 6 years, whatever it could be, the waiting list is long. And then it came to the point where they were aware of my father's situation. So the file was there. And then it just came to a point one weekend where things just got really bad. And I hadn't been there. My son had just broken his femur. So I was at the hospital with him and the rest of my family was with my mom and dad. And again, I get the call from my sister and my mother and it's like, yeah, Dad, this is not good. Like Mom cannot be doing this anymore. And so, we put in the call to the social worker. And basically when it comes to that point, at least here in Montreal at the time, is they do something what they consider putting him on what they call a whiteboard. They put the name on a whiteboard. And that means any available bed. Anywhere on the island or off island. So that could have been anywhere.
Yeah.
And when we finally got the call, which came in, I think about 2 weeks later, my mom calls me in a panic. She's like, the social worker just called me. We have 15 minutes to decide.
Wow.
15 minutes. So I'm not sure but 15 minutes. So I'm like, okay, Mom. So I call the social worker back. It's like, okay, what are we dealing with? And she's like, well, there is a bed available in a residence in El Bazaar. Now, my siblings and I, we all live on the West Island. My mother was living in LaSalle at the time. And I'm like, yep, we're taking it. Yeah. Like, I didn't even call my siblings. I didn't go, even with my mom, and my mom's like, but where is it? And Mom, it doesn't matter. It's El Bazaar, because they could have said it could have been in the East End. It could have been in the South Shore. It could have been, God knows where. And I'm like, no, Mom, we're taking it because we were all within 10 minutes of the residence. And so, when we got the call, and that was hard. Like, I have to give a shout out to, I'm getting emotional. I need a minute. So to my mom and my brother and my sister, because when they had to drop him off at the residence, that was hard.
Yeah.
That was hard. Yeah. So that was hard. I didn't have to. I was saved from that. And I have to even thank Helen because she actually went to check up on my dad because he was so attached to my mom that they actually recommended that once we placed him, they actually told my mom, don't come and see him. Like, and it killed her. But it was like, if you can have maybe a family friend. So thank God for Helen. She would check up on my dad. And then slowly, like my mom, we started to go. And it was really, really rough on my mom and my dad and my sister and my brother, because I was at home with my son. I had just gotten back from the hospital after he'd broken his femur. And I got, I get this call and I'm like calling my sister and I'm calling my brother. And it's like, okay, guys, like, this is what we have to do. And they're like, okay, just pack him a bag. Like, it became we went from him, being at home, my mom doing, to like a full 180 and having to make these decisions, which you don't want anybody, like, really. And it's unfortunate that it's the nature of the beast when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia. It is just the nature of the beast that you are having to take these decisions for, a loved one. It's not easy.
I was going to say, because I'm feeling the pain and hearing it a lot. I will say 50% of caregivers are at risk for developing dementia themselves. So if we don't protect the caregivers and the care partners in the world, this is a really bad situation. You're losing both people at the same time. So as tough as that decision is to have one parent go into long-term care, you really are protecting the person that was caring for that person. And those numbers of 50% to 60% risk of developing dementia themselves is frightening. And I think that's the part about, if I can't put the oxygen mask on first, I can't help anybody. So it just, that's the guilt of seeing a loved one go into a secured floor and that, but also it's just a horrible situation, but also you have to take a breath because you can't have both go at the same time. So those are really hard decisions. And my heart goes out to you.
Caregiving clearly changes us, right, as we go through this. Any lessons that were learned along the way? People that may be starting down this path that you can say, listen, watch out for, or do this or don't do this.
Yeah, so I wasn't keen to join a support group. And I did find one. Like, you have to look around for the right one. But they were amazing because they were on different parts of their journey, early stage, mid, and late. I also got help for one-on-one with a caregiver advocate, which was a game changer because I could vent and I could share and I could weep in a safe space. And then I had to learn how to communicate with my friends because my friendships were at risk. They were saying, can we send your dad flowers? And I was like, what about me? I'm drowning. He's okay. I'm taking care of him. He doesn't need flowers. So one of the times I just reached out to a friend and she said, what can I do? And I said, I need to borrow your dog. And I took the dog out to visit my dad and he had a day with this dog. So I just say, build your circle of care as a caregiver, build it early and start to map out, I need supports and I need levers and I need respite. And so we all make the mistake of trying to manage on our own. You really need to, out of the gate, get your circle of care in order.
And I think is not being seen, right? That's a big common theme that we get so immersed in it. Kind of touching on it, Sarah, with the friends. They're focused on the person who's been given the diagnosis. What about us that are the caregivers, right? We need attention too. Anyone have something to comment on that? Like, what helped you, if anything, feel that you were supported? Sarah talked about reaching out to her friends and just asking for the help as well, which is commendable, or support groups, one-on-one.
Actually, I should be thankful towards that. Right? During the time, my mom was admitted in May in the hospital, so it was a tough decision because that's the first time they approached her. A mom is in a stage where we should be putting in a house care outside in CLCT. So, but we're talking with the family and everything. we talked about what to do. But she's in a stage where she doesn't understand any language. She cannot say anything, whether she wants food, whether she wants, like, even right now we get the help from the CLC coming home, but somebody has to stay with her. She's very aggressive. So like one of the kid or me or somebody has to stay. Like they cannot do it alone. So during the time, we decided to let her keep her home because she will not survive outside because she doesn't know anything to express zero. So during the time of May, when it happened, I reached out to Varsha and she was a great support help to me. It's a lot of advices she gave me, helped me like understand what it is because she had gone through it, opened me up. And then afterwards I started letting things go off much easily. I do a lot of yoga, so that helped me up too, same time. And accept the reality kind of. So it made it much easier afterwards kind of. So reaching out always helps sometimes. And then unexpectedly one call and it may change a lot of things up, me up my thinking and look at things.
Well, thank you for the shout out. But honestly, I think that's what we do, right? And I think as caregivers, those who step into that role, we have a lot of empathy. We can see it when it's happening around with other caregivers. And the big reason for the entire podcast, not just this episode, is about sharing our experiences so that others can learn and be prepared in whatever way. We don't have all the answers. We don't have all the experiences, but a little bit of sharing really goes a long way.
I think one of the biggest pieces as well, and I think people have already started to allude to that, is just mental health supports. So I find that mental health, it really hampers on caregivers. I know that the discussions about anticipatory grief, I started having that when my grandfather had his first fall and I had his own blood in my hands, and just seeing how fragile he is, it became difficult. And even being able to speak to a therapist, to be able to just highlight and troubleshoot some of the problems I was going through was really huge. And then the other biggest piece is just forgiveness. I think that's a big piece of being able to forgive ourselves as caregivers, because we're hard on ourselves. A lot of times you're escaping that role of, for myself as a grandchild, and becoming more of a caregiver in that sense. But being able to forgive myself for the things that I'm making now. And with me, I'm the named as a personal directive. So I know that I'm going to have to make the tough decisions down the road, and forgiving myself when I do have to make those really tough decisions is a really big thing that we have to focus on.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought me back to that, our attention back to that. So in terms of the impact on family, children, work, any comments on how you balance that? Or do you just forget about everything else? Which we can't.
No, the only way you balance it, because I had 2 young children, a 3 and a 5-year-old, the only way you balance it is by asking for help. And everybody in my family stepped in. They all, what can we do? And number one, the kids, my mother, my sisters, my friend, everybody helped me with the kids. The kids were number one, and they were, they didn't know, because I buffered a lot of the stuff. I buffered it all. That's what we do. And so they were playing, going to school, not knowing really, the trauma and the torture that was going on behind the walls. Because when, knock on wood, he looked good and he felt good until the end, where he didn't, and he was sick and he was going. So that was a godsend for us as a family. But I've always asked for help because I'm always there to help. So I didn't feel guilt in asking. And there were people, you figure out who's there really that wants to help openly and honestly. And the people who are like, oh, we'll help, but you're best to just keep to the people you know. And the people who came out of that you didn't even realize would come out and help and be there for you. It's astounding, and it's a blessing, and it's thrilling.
Those are the beautiful surprises.
Those are the beautiful surprises.
The unexpected love that can come from the most unexpected sources too.
Yeah, the people who came out and you thought, holy moly, I didn't even see that coming. It was beautiful.
Jess, you're working out of the home. How do you keep that in with, and your mother's living with you, so you've got almost like a double hit.
Yeah, Doug. I'm happy one thing, we're supposed to go 3 times a work, but my work understands where I stand. They've been very helpful. They let me come only once a week. And especially the support with my kids too helps, because we are all very active. The 3 kids are doing sports activity as well as they help. That was a guilt feeling always to come, like at that age, they're trying to spend their time on the grandmother who doesn't, and they're very good. They spend a lot of time every day. They come and sit with us. So that's a good thing you came out of it. That's they're building the gratitude. They're learning what love, care is kind of, you see. And The what balance everybody puts in. So one thing what happened was going out has become very less, meeting friends has become very less. So the time right now is to be with mom and spend time. The kids know it too, so we try to adjust everything. It's tough, but learning all the time, kind of.
And you learn there's limited time.
Yeah.
There's limited time with your loved ones when they're sick or they're like that. So the end result is it is a blessing because you get to spend that time and you'll have that with you when they're not here.
Yeah. It's about the balance, right? We find it, we try to find it. I think Sarah, you might have mentioned it, that if we don't find that balance, then it's our own mental health that's really at risk. We're all coming from different experiences, different backgrounds culturally, different people that we're caring for, grandparents, parents, spouse. What do you find in terms of similarities between caregivers?
The ones that step up, because there's a whole family of, but the ones that actually step up all have the same thing. We live or die on the fact of if our parents and our spouses and whoever's sick is going to be okay. And we want to do everything possible. And we all sometimes have to figure out the balance, like you said, of how much we've put in and taken out of our own energy and how much. But it's always that, my doctor told me a long time ago when I was going through this, I said to her, this is terrible. Like, I'm devastated, And she said, people don't realize if you love a lot, you're going to feel that on the other end a lot. The fact, the loss, the sickness, the illness, that's the price of loving. And so that's what we all have in common. We love and we're connected and we want to help. And
Well, I think it's also just the struggle, that constant struggling, the decision making. Am I making the right decision? Is this the best course of action? Am I doing everything that I possibly can? Is this enough? Is this, and again, and when you're like in Sarah's case where, she was able to make the decisions for her dad on her own, it was different on our end because my mother was the primary decision maker. But then, she would have to deal with us after as the kids and saying when we would see something, it's like, okay, Mom, you sure that this is what you want to do? Like, is this the best decision? So it became a struggle for her because, that's an extra pressure on her because we had a different perspective. And so it was that constant, like trying to do the best that you can with what you have in the moment. And that's what it is. Every decision that you're making is a decision in the moment and then, things change and then, well, okay, now you got to change that decision and you got to think of something else. What else is going to work, right? It's an ever changing, it's an ever adapting, it's an ever evolving thing. And I think this is something that, at least from my perspective, I think this is something that a caregiver has to go through.
Do you ever think about who you were before you were a caregiver and what you might be after?
Prior to being a caregiver, the only time I set foot in a hospital was 3 times when my grandparents passed. And after that experience with both parents, I've had 290 days in hospital in 6 different hospital systems. So learning how to be an advocate, rally for seniors because they are not seen in healthcare appropriately. I think my mother got discarded many times, like because, oh, she's old, so we won't. She wasn't a priority. And I think that shocked me in a hospital setting. So really, again, speaking up, finding your voice is something that we don't feel we can push back. So I learned how to push back. I learned how to advocate. I learned how to become a patient navigator. I learned that resilience is one thing, but again, if you don't take care of yourself, it is on you to take care of yourself. So putting your hand up, and I think like it's growth. It's knowing that we're giving the best quality of life to support our loved one, and again, being that advocate and stepping up. That's something I didn't think I would do or could do, and I did it to the best of my ability, and yeah. That's basically what I learned about myself.
That's interesting because the role of advocacy seems to come from having lived it, right? You can't become an advocate unless you've actually experienced so much of this. And I don't think there's many of us that, certainly around the table, that have thought that I'm going into this field, right? We kind of were propelled into it by the circumstances.
I think as well, just for me, it's really allowed me to dig deep in terms of what my core values are. So when I had finished school, again, like hell bent on my career, like that's all I want to focus is on my career, getting my life started. But then with having to step in with my grandparents, it's really had me to dig deep in terms of like my values or my family, to be able to give everything to my grandparents. And so what I've been focused on for more than a decade of schooling completely shifted to it's all about them. And I think that that's going to continue to echo that. It's not about the career, the things that get you away from family. It's truly what can we do for our family and those that mean the most to us.
Do you think some of us are chosen for this role, or do we just get kind of propelled into it? Like, why is it that one of the siblings steps in rather than, well, maybe in your case, all of them did?
Well, yeah, well, in my situation, it was slightly different. I've always been a stay-at-home mom. So, my siblings, they worked every day. They had their own families. They have they have their own situations. And even though I was working part-time at a certain point when my father's diagnosis was getting progressively worse, I mean, it just came to the point where, I was doing it more for myself. So at the end of the day, it was, I'm, basically looking up, talking it over with my husband and my kids and stuff. And it's like, this doesn't make sense for me to be just doing, something part-time when at this point in time, I could be helping a little bit more. So, at the time, it just made sense. It just made sense at the time that I was able to, just, if there was a situation, I could just drop everything and then just go. Right, which was a little bit, but again, my siblings and my dad had other medical issues as well. He did have, he had COPD, so he always have like pneumonia. So then he would have to be hospitalized. Like sometimes it would be a week, 2 weeks, and then we would all be on a rotation. We'd actually set up a schedule where who can stay with him, like during the day, during the night, but then when it got progressively more and more, it was like, okay, mom, like you have to understand that maybe this is a lot for everybody to take time off work and time off school, and so then my sister was able to contact someone through a friend that was able to provide like caregivers that we were able to, which again comes to the cost base, like Sarah was saying before, where, you have parents that have worked all of their lives, have sacrificed their entire life for everything. And then all of a sudden, some of their financial retirement is going towards having to provide extra care outside of the system, because the system, you can't rely on the system the way you need to. And all of that extra is coming out, which was all on my mom. All right. So she's having to rebalance all of her finances and her budgeting to kind of like help support my father's care. And, at the end of the day, we would kind of try and make her understand. It's like, look, mom, you and dad worked really hard. Dad worked really hard. Well, take what he did, take it and put it towards taking care of him. Mm-hmm. Right? Like just try and change that mindset in her head that it's okay. Like, I know it's hard, but it's okay. This is what needs to get done. So we just have to do it.
Yeah, there's a generational thing too, right? That it's okay, I'm saving because I'm going to pass this on to the legacy, right? The children, grandchildren. And I'm dipping into that now. Well, that's not a bad thing, right? You earned it. So as you said, use that for what it's meant to be.
It's almost 30 years back when my dad was in palliative care with cancer, and then it's almost the last day he was passing, and then it's midnight, almost I think 1, 2, can't recollect, and he calls me. I was sitting there, my mom was there. He takes my mom's hand, puts her in my hand, and then just within a few hours afterwards, he passes away. He called, and so it was like he chose me kind of to take care of my mom, since he has been there with me since the time, taking care of the best I could.
Right. And you're not the only son, so it's not that it was, so it wasn't just that this was the male heir in our traditions, right, where it goes.
So I think it's like a mix of both. So I've always been very, very close to my grandparents. They essentially had raised me as a kid. So I think it was a sense that they had chosen me just because I'm one of the closest to them in comparison to the rest of the family. But then for my immediate and my extended family, I am the only health professional across all of us. And so I'm finding even outside of my own grandparents, so my mother, she had some health concerns. All of the eyes go on me in terms of helping to make the decisions and stepping in. And there's one of me for a very large family. So that becomes a little difficult.
So it's interesting that all the comments here about being chosen was you were chosen by someone else. It's not that you had this thing that said, I need to be that person. I guess it comes together that way because when everybody else kind of steps back, you're going to say, well, somebody has to do it, right? So we self-choose as well.
Maybe that's the way it goes in parenting. But when it's your spouse, you're chosen because you're the spouse.
Yes.
And also, I believe, because I work in this field now with seniors and their families and whatever, it's also a character thing. It's a character thing. Yes, I was the wife, but I've helped my family, in-laws, uncles, aunts, and it's not because I have to. Some of them, they weren't my biological family. I felt this is what I need to do because I saw someone struggling. Maybe I have a little more knowledge in certain things. But it's something I felt I had to do. It's not even something I can fight against. But in a family, I understand there's sometimes a dynamic. Some people are not living there. Some people are,
I think it's a good point, Helen, that especially for those who've gone into it as a profession, you are choosing, right? And you're choosing with hopefully open eyes on what this means, because emotionally it's a drain. We've talked about that, right? We've talked about the guilt and stuff. If you could change the caregiving story, what would you change? Whether it's your own journey or generally about the industry, if I call it that, of caregiving.
Has to be recognized. It has to be recognized. And not just saying, oh, they're caregivers, we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. It needs to be recognized. When you go into the system, it needs to be easier to bring your people into the system, especially your family with dementia, understanding when they go into the hospital, chaos ensues because now they're not at home. They're in a different place that's threatening and scary for them, and helping us just navigate all that. So I find the system, and also waiting in, I said this before, emergency rooms and all the things you have to do. There has to be a better way of handling, step by step, how to get someone through a system, getting the CLSC quicker, not having to wait,
6, 7, 8 years in some cases.
Is that for a HSLT? Yes.
This is just crazy numbers, and we know it's only going to get worse. We've heard the stats on how this is just going to, by 2030, we're going to be a quarter of the population is going to be in need. Do you think Canada recognizes and values the informal care worker, caregiver? And if you do, or if you think it should, how should that value be recognized?
I don't think they do. So it's a lot of times, again, you see people having to quit their jobs to be able to help care for their parents. There's some supports to go for the formal caregivers, so the home care supports, but there's not enough financial services to be able to provide for caregivers, nor is there enough respite. 6 hours a week that Alberta gives, it isn't enough. And it is a lot of times because the healthcare system, and we're hearing this across, there's 3 different provinces that are on the call here. And it's echoes across that the system is crumbling. There's not enough supports from the formal supports. So we need to put more into those of us that are giving the informal supports to the caregivers.
That's a great point.
Yeah, there was a LinkedIn post today by Cindy Diago, who's building out caregiver supports, and she quoted statistics. So Americans in some states financially support caregivers with paid income that is fairly reasonable. But there are other countries. I think Korea is doing some work. Japan's doing some work. We have a long way to go. We're very far behind. So if women particularly women leave the workforce, that affects the economy drastically. So to Noelana's point, like we've got a lot of fixing to do. I don't think anybody that's a caregiver is asking for a handout. They're asking for a helping hand. So whether that comes in the form of respite, putting respite services into community, allowing that person to step away from their household with their loved one, that they're safe so they can do things and breathe and live a life is really going to be important in the future. And finding a better financial model for seniors. I'm going to just tell you that the cost of my dad's illness was $900,000, and we were about 1.5 years away from being broke. So if that's what he had, imagine others who don't have it and don't have equity in a home, they're going to be at risk. So I'm also advocating for seniors. They need apartments. We need new protocols to put in place for seniors to live independent lives, to have supports in place, aging in place at home. It's huge thing to talk about. Not everyone's going to go into long-term care. Not everybody needs long-term care. So we've got this gap, and we've got to rally and make sure that we're innovating.
Yeah, great point, Sarah. I think in Quebec, we can get about 55% of your salary, is my understanding, that if you're under compassionate care, if you leave the workforce, maybe employers need to be more understanding. Your team seems to be very understanding, understanding that you need reprieve, that you need to be suddenly, there's an emergency, you've got to take off. We need a little bit more education on the employer front as well.
Sorry, and then just to be able to ask as well, we're all here as caregivers. There's many that do not have families. So how do we have the supports for those that do not have, are fortunate to have families or friends to be able to help them? I think that's one of the biggest problems I've been seeing professionally, is that there's only so much we can do. And if they have no one, then they're falling through the cracks.
That's a great point, because that's a great point. There's so many that I can think of that are in my extended friend circle that don't have children, don't have the network, perhaps friends of friends, but we're usually of all the same generation. So, we're all dealing with our own issues and illnesses as well.
Especially in the Quebec, the problem I saw was the French language. Like, given instant, my mom doesn't understand anything. We get somebody just started 2 weeks back for the respite service that said that 3 hours you could go out, but my mom doesn't understand anything. So the person who comes, he just comes. We have to be with her to explain to her what's happening. So every week there's a new person showing up. So every time, it's not like you're taking time. I don't have to go that day to work just to stay to explain them what to do for my mom. So it does not really help. The only thing, by the time I'm helping finish all the stuff, she's just sitting afterwards and she's lying down. That's the only thing doing kind of for 2 hours. But other times I have to be with that 1 hour, explain her exactly what to do to her.
And that's the balance, right? Because we've got the beauty of some public support. So they come when they come, and you've got to educate them. And the balance against bringing in your own private carers, right? Which you would train once, and then presumably that would just keep it consistent and give you that break to be able to have, I'm going to be at home. I'm just going to work. Like I did that. Well, even when our caregivers were changing over, and we had 24/7 for mom and dad. And then sometimes you'd get a replacement one in. So I would leave my home and come to my parents' home, and I would show them a few things, but then I was able to work from home. And then if there was a question, they would ask me. And I can also have eyes on my mom or my dad at the time. So yeah, we've got some of these balances, but that's a great point, that we've got to be able to, the people coming in have to know what they're doing, which means educating them, right? So that's another toll.
Well, I think it's not just us educating them. I think it's the government making sure that they are actually having the right people in and they're being vetted properly. Because again, the same thing with when the situation happened with my dad and getting some respite for my mom, when my mom would just want to just lie down and be in her room and just lie down for an hour. And even if a caregiver was there, one lady actually says, well, if you're going to be here, the whole point is that you go out and spend time out. And so she left. So my mom's calling me and I'm like, okay, the whole point is just so that you could, because you spent all night up, like you were exhausted, because dad was always getting up to go to the washroom. And so mom was following him because just in case. So some just don't get the concept as to why they're there. It's just to give someone time to just rest and relax. And so it was constantly having to call back and saying this isn't working. And, you need to, this needs to be fixed. And even when my dad was in the CHSL did, which a shout out to them, they were amazing with my father, the caregivers that were there. I did have one particular nurse, unfortunately, that things just did not go well with my father. And it was a constant calling in and saying, oh, your dad's doing this and your dad's doing that, until finally one day she picked up the phone, she called me and she says, I'm asking for your dad to be transferred.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, no, like, this is not your decision. And this is where, like everybody was saying, you have to advocate for them because they can't speak for themselves. And so this is where you have to step in, and you have to sometimes be a bulldog and say, no, this is not happening. And, things have to, and thank goodness, those that were there, we had the other staff members that were like, no, this is definitely not a unilateral decision. You cannot just turn around and say, my dad's being transferred. Everybody had to make the decision. And I basically had to stand up for my father and saying, I don't want her near my father.
Yeah.
She got transferred.
Yeah. It's interesting because the respite, it's changing. It was very much like that if you had to leave in order to have your respite block. At least in Quebec, it's changed now where you can come and my dad used to meditate here. So they're making those adjustments. I think also to your point about training, the training of the care providers that are coming in, but even once they're here, they don't know, like they didn't know my mother's needs and wants and desires or food or stuff, or even the language. Although I have an issue with that too, because I think we could do a lot through sign language. Like, do you want to eat? Like we can do that. Yeah. The other point also, I just want to comment that when people when they come for respite, depending on where you're getting that respite worker from, a lot of times they're told, like let's say they're coming from 1 to 3. Well, that might be the lunchtime. Oh, we don't feed, we don't cook.
Yeah.
Right. So you've just taken away the respite from my dad because now he has to make sure food is ready and fed to my mom. So why are you here? Right. So yeah, there's a lot of education that needs to take place at various levels for this.
Some of the caregivers I found is very good. Like one of them, especially, I spoke with my social worker, and she comes every morning. My mom is totally different with her. She goes with her easily to the washroom, follows, listens to her. She sits, and they got along so well, better than me. I can sometimes say it, like as soon as she comes, she gets smiles. She says bye. She gets up to go to the washroom with her. So it might be hard for the sales to offer that service too, but it's something it could be worked on, who becomes comfortable. So we have the time. Like some of them they just don't want to even do it. Like they want the bed exactly lifted to that size to do cleaning, a little bit movements. They don't want, this is the way they told us, this is the way we want to do it. Right? Because some of them.
Yeah, I know, and I get it, right? They're on a rotation, they're going home to home to home, and they've got 20 minutes to come and do a diaper change. But if you need to brush, have your teeth brushed and stuff, oh, sorry, we don't have time for that. So it's it puts other challenges on the family and the caregivers as well. If the one that you love, the one person that you're caring for or cared for, could have some insight into what you're doing, what could you expect or hope that they would see or do or say to make things easier for you? And if that's a little bit tough for you to kind of put yourself in that space to give that advice to the one that you're caring for, think of it in terms of the listeners to this show. What can you advise to those that are requiring care to help them with their caregivers? So it's really getting into the loved ones, the elders, or maybe not elders in the case of a spouse, but who is going to receive the care. What would you advise them for the caregivers?
That's a hard question to answer.
I can share a little bit from mine, I guess. The aha moment for me when I was I'd never really recognized it as stress or guilt or whatever label we want to put on it. It was our palliative nurse who, the first time he came here and he saw Dad, and then he also just looked in on Mom, but he was here for my father. It was not the first time; it was the second time that he came, and I guess he saw that we had professional care providers, but I was really here. And I remember being at the door saying goodbye, and Greg turned around and said, "And how are you doing?" Right? And that just feeling like I'd been seen, right? That it's not like you need the pat on the back. It was just being recognized. And my dad did that when we were caring for my mom. So before my dad's cardiac failure, he had done that to me several times in his way, thanking me for being there. And I would always kind of poo-poo it because I'm the daughter. What do you mean? What are you thanking me for? This is my duty, you mentioned, right? It's my duty. It's my role. Why wouldn't I? But hearing that from an outsider at a time when I probably really needed it, I maybe didn't need it as much when my dad said it, or because I dismissed it. So that's one area that I would say to any person who's receiving the care. Take the time to show that you see what the person is doing. You see what the caregiver is sacrificing in their lives, whether it be, Nolana, your education, whether it be your children, whether it be your own work life. There's so many things that are being sacrificed willingly, happily. We're doing it by choice, but it's still sacrifice, right? So that would be my little advice for anyone that's on the receiving end of the care. Sarah, go ahead. Yeah.
So the phrase and quote I've learned is care is not a task, it's a relationship. So my father probably would be slightly mortified that I was helping him bathe and toilet in the end, but I told him I was his good friend. And, he would step out of the shower and we would create this routine, and I'd lean in and say, listen, let's get some lotion going. Not everybody can bend down to lotion their legs, and I'd be lotioning his legs and his arms, and he'd just look at me and tap me on the head, and he said, thank you so much. Now, he didn't speak because he had aphasia, but boy, he could put the sentence together, thank you so much, and recognize that this wasn't a task, this was care, and he had agency over his body, and I was there supporting him. That was huge for me because I stopped tasking on him, and I kept saying, wouldn't it be nice to have some lotion? Wouldn't it be nice to comb your hair? Wouldn't it be nice to shave? And I stopped moving through the duty and just let him say, oh, yes, please. And so because he couldn't say it, I had to gesture, like you said, use gestures. Boy, that was a wake-up call for me.
Yeah, a great point, Sarah.
For me, everybody always asked, which was lovely. They always asked me, and I'd say, how nice is that? They would ask me, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Maybe because, again, I was younger, I had 2 young children, and they worried about, us as a family. But I've always, and all the people I've cared for, including my husband, have always been very grateful and have told me so, which was lovely. But I never did it for that. But it was such a nice thing to know that people care because, yes, the person is sick, but they have all the care in the world. So even though they're struggling, they have everybody, hospitals, doctors, a family, everybody on them. And, sometimes you look in the mirror and you go, what the heck happened here? It's been a long day. So it's nice that other people, look in and just say, hey, we're here and we're proud of you.
Very good. Final question, and I'm going to go around to everyone here. What would be your final message or lesson learned, whether something you wish somebody had told you before you started on this caregiving path that we can impart to our listeners? And Nolana, I'm going to start on this side.
Put me first. I was hoping I could listen to some other people first. I would just say that, yeah, it is a part of the journey, but I find that the caregiving journey is, while I'm fairly at the beginning of it, I think it's one of the most rewarding things I could have ever done. Just to be able to see my grandparents want to stay at home, and for me to be able to hopefully grant that right until the end of days. I think that will be one of the biggest things I'll take to heart even throughout the rest of my life, is that the people that helped to raise me, to be able to give back to them, is one of the most important things I could have ever done.
What a beautiful, beautiful statement. Absolutely. Sarah.
Oh, no, Alana said what I said too. The same thing. I think it was a wake-up call for me to just get out of my head and pursue the job and the career and all the joy of the world, and be pulled out and to do the role that they did for me. They raised me. They looked after me. They never abandoned me. There's no way I could abandon them. They lived and aged in place as long as they could. We moved through it. I had to make executive decisions. I will say expect the unexpected. And I started to get things in order very quickly when my mother got ill. So my heads up to all caregivers is do as much as you can around your power of attorney and personal care and bank accounts, just for the very reason that when you go into crisis, there's no time and there's so much legality to things that if you can start the dialogue early about your healthcare directives, please do so, because I did with my parents and I was able to manage much easier. And it's not like that if you don't expect the unexpected.
Absolutely. Well said. Helen.
I would say for family with dementia, number one, we are in their world now. They're not in ours. For family who's sick, like my husband or anyone in your family, ask for help. Ask for help. It's the only way, to get through a day. And the love of your family and the last however much time you have with your family, it's all about love. And sometimes it's so stressful, you don't even see that until, it's all peaceful and quiet and you realize what lovely long goodbyes we have. And we don't even realize the blessing is that at the end.
Beautifully said too. Marilla.
I think it's touching up on everything. I mean, just like Sarah said, I think one of the biggest things was be prepared. Be prepared with your paperwork. Be prepared with your powers of attorney. Be prepared with your wills and your mandates on a living will. A living will is extremely important to have in situations like this, which my mom was very good in preparing, because it just helps with all the legality of the situation after the fact of things that you have in common. I think it's also, like Helen said, you need to kind of just not worry so much about what's happening, but maybe just kind of just be in the moment with the person when you are with them, because things change from one minute to the next. And also take care of yourself in the process. I think, we tend to forget the caretaker tends to forget to take care of themselves. And I think that's one of the biggest things that you have to just keep reminding yourself of that.
I thank you for bringing up the paperwork, because I think that's a very important point that we've talked a lot about the emotions and the process of being there for the ones that we're loving as they go through to their end of life. But having the paperwork also makes it a little bit easier for you at the end of the day. And even in the process with the living power of attorney, we do have a notary coming on in a future episode as well, doing a deep dive into each of those, because I think it's very important for us to understand what's required, how it actually helps us, for all of us to be prepared in our lives as well.
Again, it's another financial step for the parents. Again, that mindset that, oh, I'm spending more money because, even our notary explained to my mother, it's very important to promulgate the wills to make sure that they go through the courts. And when we did all that, it was very expensive. But when we did all that, when it came decisions from my mother to finally sell their home, no one batted an eye. When anything to do with her financial, anything with my father, nobody batted an eye. So everything just went smoothly, which is very important. It's one less thing to worry about.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about all, the love that you were saying, that we're all motivated by this love, even for the people that are being cared for, there's sometimes a lot of cultural resistance to putting a will together or putting a homologation process started or a power of attorney. By taking those steps, it means you are allowing your loved ones to have less on them at the time of grief, right? Because they're already grieving for your loss. Now you're burdening them with the uncertainty and chaos of everything that goes with not having a will and not having your affairs in order. So thank you for raising that point. Yeah, Josh.
There's nothing which in a sense I can say is sometimes it's frustrating, but it gives us a lot of joy seeing the person being happy, looking at it. Like just this week, I took her to the hospital. She thought that I was taking her to put in her old age. Somehow she lifts her hands, puts on her face, and touches you, that gives the joy of taking care of it. That's what. It's just they're happy. I even in dementia, I think they know that they are surrounded by people who they are. They feel very comfortable, and that brings joy. The same thing with my kids and life, helping them. It's just
That's true. And that's a great point too, because your children are watching and learning,
lovely.
right? Whether they're talking about it or not, but they're watching and learning. My own comment would be find your inner peace, because through all of this, all of the chaos and the giving, which you're doing very willingly, we have to also find that inner balance. And whatever makes you find it. It could be meditating, could be going for a walk, could be reading a book, it could be watching no brain TV, whatever, right? Like whatever it is, but find that balance in you.
Just like I said, the yoga has helped me. I go almost every day. The community is beautiful. They listen to you. They just understand you, and they're just going in and coming out. You just helps you out, kind of. Yeah, that has given me a lot of strength and friends.
Thank you all so much for being so open and candid with all of your stories and your experiences. I have learned here, and I'm hoping our listeners have things to take away with them as well. I hope you've all learned from each other. I feel like we've made new friends here around the table as well. So once again, thank you all so much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. As we close, I'm struck by how different our caregiving stories are, and yet how similar the emotions beneath them feel. Caregiving asks so much of us: time, energy, patience, and heart, but it also gives us something back: perspective, empathy, a clearer sense of what really matters. To every caregiver listening, your work is seen or unseen, is love in action. If this conversation spoke to you, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and explore the care toolkit we've created to help you bring these ideas home. Let's keep reimagining how we age and how we care together. Thank you for listening in and sharing your time with me. Please join me each week for new insights into aging with dignity. Until next time, reminding us all, age gracefully and live vibrantly. Everything you've heard today, just real talk. It's just our personal stories, experiences, and honest opinions. This podcast isn't providing legal, medical, financial, or therapeutic advice. And no, listening doesn't make me or my guests your lawyer, doctor, financial advisor, or therapist. The guests and I are here to share stories, spark ideas, and hopefully give you something to think about. When it comes to the big decisions, make sure you do your homework or check in with the experts who know your situation best. We're here to keep the conversation going. You're the one in the driver's seat.